So my name's Matt Wilkinson. I'm the CEO of BizInc. I'd like to welcome along Gayatri Wood, who is does a lot of social media for BizInc, a lot of other companies. I think it's fair to say you're a social media expert, Gayatri.
I'll go with that. No worries. Good morning, good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Hope we answer all of your questions, really.
Good stuff. Well, look, this is going to be a real practical session, so I'm going to fire straight into the first question, and this is something that we get asked a lot, and it's does social media work for accountants? So before I kind of ask you this question, like as I say, we get asked this by a lot of accounting firms, and I think there's a kind of a misunderstanding of what social media does. Is it like a marketing tool? Is it a communication tool? There's all kind of things that social media does. But just quickly, you know can you allay people's fears that social media does actually work?
Short answer is yes. I think for accountants, there will always be a very, very small amount that it may not be ideal for, or it may not be the best for. But in general terms, absolutely. I think where I see a lot of accountants and just businesses in general struggle with is actually associating what they want their social media accounts for, or their
Hmm.
social media accounts to do. And often there's disparity within an accountancy firm or within an organisation as well, because someone may have one idea of what social media is going to do for them, and someone may have another as well. So I think clarity around what does work actually mean to you and to your firm, and what means success is a really good place to start, because once you get that nailed down, it's easy to measure whether or not it's working for you, and what you may or may not need to do in order to make that better.
Hmm. Because I think personally, I feel that social media is a really broad thing. Like if we talk about email marketing, there's things within that, but it's quite a specific thing. If we talk about search engine marketing, we can define that quite tightly. But social media is quite a loose term, covering lots of different things, lots of different
Absolutely.
sites. So I think with my next question, I'd kind of say, following on from that, I guess, what are the different ways accounting firms can use social media? Um, it's not just an advertising channel, which is something that I think some firms think it is. So, what are some of the different ways you see it being used?
Well, for me, the main key areas is one of them being recruitment. I
Hmm.
think a lot of people forget that having your brand and your accounting firm out there makes you look like a viable employer, especially for the millennial generation and the
Hmm.
younger generation. Having seeing social shares or being recommended a job online is a really good way, especially if it's going through an already existing network or through your existing staff to their network.
Hmm.
Um, Customer support and service as well. You do see, obviously, you can think of some of the big brands like airlines or something like the online buying stores that use this to a full extent. Part of their social media role is purely customer service. I think accountants sometimes forget that can be, obviously, to a lesser extent for their clients and their prospects as well. Are they going to ask questions about, when super may be coming in, or BAS or GST, or are you, going to be there to answer the information, give them the practical advice? Quite often, it's a lot quicker and a lot easier to send someone a reply or send them a link than try and get hold of them on the phone or whatnot. So
Hmm.
there are some really good ways that you can think about incorporate customer service in. Of
Hmm.
course, new lead generation and people being able to find you on social media, being interested in you as a firm, your staff wanting to work with you. And also, again, around that customer service face is servicing your existing clients with information about your firm, information that's pertinent to them, maybe changes to their business that may be coming, changes to the taxation or laws, keeping them informed. And also, if you are extending your services, you're looking at bringing in new products or services, a good way to extend out and to keep them in the loop as well, so your clients are always in the know about what's going on. So I think those are the main components for me. Depends again on your firm and your client base and what you're looking to achieve. But I think in general, a lot of social media accounts to some degree or another will encompass those areas.
Yeah, definitely. Something that I think I guess underestimated before I started using social media a lot is the networking benefit. And you know, ultimately I think accounting is about relationships. And I think that's like a massively underrated part of it. Especially with the accounting, let's call it the ecosystem, around, for example, Xero. There's a very kind of social community around that where you can actually speak to some very high up decision makers and interesting people, which I think with traditional media you would never have that chance. Do you see that as a big benefit of social?
Definitely. Like, I think social media creates accessibility. A lot of people are either a tweet, a direct message, a LinkedIn message away, which removes the barrier of actually trying to get physically in front of someone now. So yeah, definitely networking such a big thing. It's good to extend your network. Quite often I know when someone adds me on LinkedIn or I go to request someone, it's really nice associating how you're actually, how that person fits into your network, because quite often you go, oh, I didn't realise Matt knew this person or worked there or is friends with this person, and it helps deepen those connections, and it helps broaden your network quite quickly as well. Especially in the case if you're looking at meeting a new client or a prospective client, doing a little bit of a social media search, seeing how they fit into your network, seeing what they're up to, their commonalities and interests, can often be a really nice way to go and prepare for that meeting as well, taking 5 to 10 minutes and helping extend your network and utilise it in that way too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, interesting one. I've been reading a book called No More Cold Calling, which is by a woman called Joanne Black, from the US, and that's kind of like, in terms of like referral selling, which would be close to the heart of any accounting firm. That's kind of like the modern Bible. So she's a pretty well known author. Reading the book, I got it through Kindle, so got sent an email, and she said, if you send me a LinkedIn connection and put a personal message, I'll get back to you. So I thought, yeah, I'll do that.
Give it a go, yeah.
Turns out she's coming to New Zealand where I live. I gave her some sightseeing tips, and now we're chatting. So that's one of kind of a leading business author, just through a little connection like that I've networked with. It might result in nothing, but I think if you do that 10 times, then something's going to come from one of those connections. So I think that can be a really.
And I think as well, even you just telling that story, and your now opinion, not only obviously you're enjoying the book, but your opinion of her now grows. And I think when you have a great opinion of something as well, obviously you build up that trust, you build up that relationship, you trust what they're going to say to you, you trust their services, so it really helps to deepen that relationship as well, and put you or put her really in this case front of mind.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point actually, that social media, obviously social is an important part of that, and human beings are social animals. And remember reading an interesting piece about business writing, and it was saying appeal to people's emotions, in that people always believe that, well, people don't always believe this, but a lot of people kind of feel like B2C kind of stuff is all about emotion and impulse, and B2B selling is very much rational and people make reasoned decisions. And that's absolute nonsense. People are just as emotional in business and just as driven by human interaction as they are by any form of rationality, So I think that's an
Absolutely.
important part of social media as well. You're gonna people you like, you're far more likely to buy from, even if their product or service isn't quite as good. If you like them, that's powerful, isn't it?
Or even, if you like them and you see value in what they're thinking, and how they're representing themselves and their brand, if their service is more, you see value in that, and
Yeah.
you're more, you're more willing to pay for a service that you equate to value, and it's
Mhm.
something that you equate to is fits with your kind of moralistic overtones,
Mhm.
what you're about, what your business is about. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So next question I've got is, what's an example, a really tangible example of an accounting firm that's using social media really well, or more than one example if you've got it.
In terms of actual accounting firms that you want me to name off, or a
Oh,
breakdown in terms of how they're using it?
um, you don't have to give a name of a firm, but maybe just give an analogy if you can think of one, or I'll come up with one if I put you on the
I
spot.
can think of a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's some I know in the Zero ecosystem, especially. I do know
Hmm.
a couple of QBO ones over here that
Hmm.
do fantastically well.
Hmm.
One of them, he has a particular niche in,
Hmm.
and he uses social media to the extent that he has a website, filters through leads on there. He has a really active blog.
Hmm.
Social media is his main point of distributing his content.
Hmm.
He actually goes to the extent of he does daily content, and he has become a thought leader in his area, and he pushes out this daily content to the extent now that it actually gets picked up by the likes of Huffington Post and
Yeah, right.
the BBC and whatnot. So that's someone who's really large scale. He derives it himself. It's a very singular sort of thing. Some could say it fits with his personality, what he's wanting to achieve personally, as well as building up a reputation for the firm, having him as a thought leader in this particular niche.
Hmm.
So that's one example. Again, quite an extreme one because he does associate quite a lot of time to it. However, he will remove time away from other areas in the business because that's where he sees his skill set is best attributed in terms of lead generation and bringing in new business and building up those relationships. There's other firms I know about, one in the Zero ecosystem. They've won a lot of awards. They're great in terms of really splitting it between using it for client support and interaction, so they'll
Hmm.
have reminders there for clients. They'll have any information that clients need. They work a lot with startups, so they often have the startup news. They engage and support the startup community as well. As an extension of their support, they've actually been asked to go in and speak around Australia at different startup communities and different shared working spaces where startups are, thriving over there, to provide them information about, the R&D tax incentives, what they should be doing, how they should be structured their company. And off the back of that, they've actually been in some quite extensive multi-million-dollar funding
Hmm.
rounds and schemes, being a virtual CFO. And that's all stemmed from them positioning themselves as a thought leader,
Hmm.
online and social media. And they extend that through. So their social media is a real, offering around servicing those clients, extending out and providing information to a wider client and prospect base, being the startup community, and also recruitment as well. I mean, they've grown quite substantially. I think in the last 12 months, they've hired something between 6 to 8 new staff.
Hmm.
All of that's come through LinkedIn and Twitter. There's
Yeah,
been
right.
absolutely nothing else. And that's simply been they've shared it out in their existing channels, their existing community. People that work with them or know them or network with them have gone,
Hmm.
they're a fantastic firm to work for. Hey, Matt, are you looking? Have you thought about this firm? And it's worked really, really well for them. So no recruitment fees there.
Yeah, yeah.
So those are probably a couple of good examples and
Hmm.
very different ones too. I mean, there's lots of firms out there. doing amazing and really good things, and globally as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That recruitment one's interesting because I spoke to two firms today, one in the US and one in Australia, and they both said one of their biggest challenges was finding good staff members. So, yeah, that's certainly interesting. Um, so I mean, that question's kind of broad, like doing social media really well. And in terms of measuring social media, I think it's harder than other things. You do email marketing, you can see how many people opened an email, clicked on it, and it's quite easy to trace that back to sales. Not as easy with social media. So we actually got a question from Stephen, and he asked what your opinion is of basically firms that are just kind of trying to push the numbers up, trying to get more followers. Is that a good metric for success? And if it's not, what are some of the things you can measure to show that you're doing well?
I think followers, for me, can be a little bit of a vanity metric.
Yeah.
Also, there are a lot of ways to gain followers very quickly. Having followers doesn't necessarily mean that they actually want to follow you or they're actually interested in what you say. So I think, quite often you might go into a room, you have 150 people in there, 150 people that you pitch to, but there may only be 2 or 3 that are really, really interested, but those are the 2 or 3 that you really, really want to focus on.
Yeah.
So the engagement around that, and the same on social, the engagement, who's actually engaging with you is more of an important thing. I always see social as a really good way of being able to reach a lot of people on an easy platform, so you can outreach to a lot of people. You can see who engages with you, and you can really target that and really work with them. So I think engagement is a really key one. Obviously, I'm not saying that followers do not, don't matter at all. They're absolutely not. If you've got 2 followers and nothing else is happening, obviously you're not attracting any new interest either. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to look for. So if you are trying to look for new leads and prospects, people that you haven't talked to before, and you're really trying to grow that, definitely you do want to look at followers, and you want that to be part of the metrics that you measure, because obviously new followers means new people that are interested. But you do want to encapsulate and kind of overlay that with some of the other metrics. So you want to have a look at who's actually engaging with you, who's actually clicking on any links you post, who's actually favoriting or retweeting any of your tweets. I think clicking on a link is always something good. It's something easy that you can measure. Often it's something that's on your website, so you know that someone's going back to your website to where you've got more information about yourself. Also things like having a look at, if you are doing any blogs, having a look at that particular blog online and seeing if anyone's actually picked it up and posted it themselves without tagging you in. Also just looking at, in terms of, you can have a look at and set up Google Analytics to see who's actually streaming through and coming through from your social channels. So that gives you a really nice funnel metric of who's actually reaching your website from your social media channels, what social media channels, and where they're progressing through as well. So you can actually completely set that up to see that funnel metric and where they end up and come through. I have seen some firms I've worked with go as far as they'll put some content out. They'll have a look at who's hit their services page. They'll pull out those particular leads, any email addresses they have in the CRM, and they'll particularly do a very specific Facebook campaign targeting those people to come in and have a chat to them. Right. So it's really, again, around what you're trying to achieve and what you want to measure, and also how much time you have as well. I mean, you don't want this to be taking up hours of your week every week. So you need to be really realistic around how much time you want to allocate to using it, what you're trying to achieve, and therefore what are the top 5 to 10 metrics that mean success for you, and how do you measure that, and how do you look at how you better those metrics each month.
Okay, yeah. So I guess maybe chasing followers is one of those, or bad followers. But what are the common kind of mistakes and pitfalls you see accounting firms making when it comes to social?
I think one of the first ones is not setting up your profile correctly. So not having an image that displays, your logo or something around your team, not having your header image set up. So I'm talking the correct specifications here, or not having anything at all, or having something pixelated, or having something that doesn't relate to your website, or anything else online that you have that's completely different. The next would be, again, on that, not completing your profile, not actually putting a blurb about yourself, whether it be on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever platform you're using, and also not putting in contact details, whether it be an email address, or associating an email address or a phone number or a website, whatever it may be. Because quite often if someone's going to land there and see something that's not completely done, or not a true representation of you, it's actually a really negative impact that they have, and a really negative perception. So that would probably be my number one thing. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, and that can be a little bit fiddly to get those images set up. And I was going to ask you about tools for managing social media later, but one that I thought we could talk about now is Canva, which is a tool you introduced me to, and that's actually fantastic for setting up those social images, because otherwise you've got to have some kind of Photoshop skills and all of that kind of thing. And but Canva, that's pretty much preset for you, and you can come up with something pretty nice, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really good, really easy to use. It's kind of like the really simplified version of Photoshop with nothing removed. However, it's so easy to use. It's got pre-built sizes for images, so you can select, Twitter header image, or Facebook header image, or Facebook social media image if you're wanting to create an image to go along with a post. If you know your particular brand colors, you can input those. You can even input in and bring in your own fonts. So if you had something really specific to your accounting firm, you can bring those in. You can upload in any of your logos or any imagery that you have, and you can easily create those images. So yeah, definitely a really good one, and one I recommend. And it's free for the most part to use as well. So that's canva.com for anyone that is interested in that.
Oh, cool. .com. I'm sending out. I said we'll send out links after the session as well.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool tool. Like you sent that to me. I wouldn't call myself a Photoshop expert, but I know my way around. But it's a pain in the ass for creating stuff. And in terms of ease, Canva's great, and you don't have to be creative to use it. I think that's the actual great thing. Is it can just it can just work.
Yeah, and I think following on from your other question, some of the other pitfalls we see is probably one of my big annoyances is people that just talk about themselves on social media. So they either repeat the exact same tweet or post all the time. They're not engaging with anyone else. All they have on their profile is just repeated tweets, or there's large gaps where they're not actually doing anything either. So I think that is something that really does hurt brands, whether you are an accounting firm, whether you're a small business, whatever it may be. Consistency is one thing to keep yourself front of mind, to keep you in there. And also not repeating yourself. I mean, I liken it to going somewhere, being dragged out to an event or somewhere, attending an event yourself, and being stuck with someone that just wants to talk about themselves the entire time and isn't interested in anything else. it's the same thing, and it's the same sort of thing if someone's trying to engage with you or is favoriting or retweeting your tweet. It's kind of like passing someone in the street and they say hi to you or give you a compliment and you just ignore them and keep going on. So it does actually have that impact of leaving a bad taste in someone's mouth, like it does in reality, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would probably be my second one. Yeah.
I think no, I mean that to me is a really kind of crucial point. Is that social media is people think of it like a technology thing, right? It's a communication thing, just like anything, any good marketing communication. It's about human interaction, and there'll be another Twitter or another Instagram or Facebook or whatever comes up, and some of those will drop away. The point is that it's about human connections. All marketing's about that, and that's what you're trying to reflect, isn't it? The technology part of it is it's just an efficiency thing. It just makes it easier to talk to more people, but you're still talking to people, not it's not some kind of robotic thing that you're doing.
Absolutely, and I think the word is social media, so it is social. It's a social aspect. It's an extension of what you are offline is what you are online. So the same common courtesies do apply. And I think that the last one, just to kind of, that feeds into that and adds into it, is just knowing a little bit more about using the tools properly. Things like actually putting in a link correctly so that it's there, people want to click on it. Checking spelling and grammar. One I see a lot. I know everyone makes some mistakes sometimes, but a lot of mistakes can be very detrimental. Using hashtags correctly as well. Don't be going in and smacking 7 hashtags into a tweet. It's not going to get you anything else. In fact, it's probably going to get you a couple of bots and some people annoyed because it looks spammy and people can't actually read the message around that. It just looks like it's clickbait, really. And also just little things around how you construct your tweets in that as well. Like, just take a little bit of time. Unless you're replying directly to someone, never start off with @Matt Wilkinson or @Gayatri Wood. Always put, a phrase or a word or even a dot of punctuation if you are very short on characters on Twitter. Just to ensure that you're not limiting where your tweets go. So that is the difference between constructing a tweet or just having a reply to having a conversation where you are just going back and forth with someone directly. And I think lastly is just thinking about the array of content you're putting out. So is it mixed? Is it varied? I know we talked yesterday, for those of you who are on the workshop yesterday, about breaking up certain parts of content over a week and what you can encapsulate to make your content interesting, keep you fresh in mind, front of mind, keep it fresh and keep your clients and prospects engaged. So just thinking that through as well.
Yeah, cool. We get asked this a lot, and is there a best social site for accountants? And well, interpret that how you will, but we get asked that question, so I'm asking you.
I think again it comes back to, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but where your clients are, what they want, and also what you're trying to achieve from it too. I mean, there are some niches that you may service if you've got a niche or a particular vertical or a particular industry. Quite often those industries are more prolific on particular social channels than on others. So obviously there are some commonalities with Twitter and LinkedIn being the two biggest. Obviously LinkedIn being the professional network, great for you to network, great if you're dealing with general businesses. Most people are on there. Twitter, fantastic for events. It's always an event platform. If you're aligned with QBO or Xero or both, they're prolific users. Also any events you attend with them as well, where they keep their industry news. A lot of people and individuals as well as businesses are on there. Be Facebook after that. I do always say Facebook after that. With the algorithms, it's quite hard to get your content in front of every single fan that you do have. although it is fantastic for advertising when you do it
Yeah.
correctly, and the parameters you can fit around that with custom audiences and really targeting leads that you're getting through into your site or prospects that you have. And then you've got things like Periscope, Snapchat, Instagram, Pinterest, to name a few. I mean, if you're dealing with design agencies or, say, personal trainers or yoga studios or retail businesses or hospitality, you'll quite find that most of them will be on Instagram, and they'll be, maybe on Snapchat as well. They'll probably most definitely be on Facebook. So to align with those customers and prospects, you may want to have an Instagram account. You may want to tailor that to service them as well, and to connect to those in that industry. So I'm not saying never don't go down those roads, but think of it carefully.
Yeah.
I would think of one or two, probably two. I would say that really connect to your goals and your audience and your clients and who you do want to target. And I'd focus on those. I would also say around that, or what was that, sorry?
I was sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say I think I would really agree that it's better to do 2 well than 3 less well and 4, pretty badly, because the every accounting firm I've ever worked with doesn't have enough time to do marketing, and
Exactly.
social isn't the only thing you're going to want to be doing. You're going to be wanting to do email marketing. You want to be doing, search marketing. So there's not a lot of time to do all of these things, and if you're awesome on Twitter and LinkedIn, that might be enough. And I think, like you said, Facebook's an interesting one where I've seen firms do. Most firms I've ever seen using Facebook business pages have got like about 100 followers and very little engagement, and the content they put on it isn't great. But advertising, I think, is a really interesting one because it's a really effective advertising channel, and that's something really to be investigated. But then when you get down to stuff like like you say, Snapchat or Instagram, if you've got a niche, you probably know about those things already. If it doesn't kind of come into your day-to-day life, then it's probably not the right place to be.
Exactly. And I will just say around that is a good tip I found is even if you are focusing on one or two, please do go to the other social channels as they are existing now and as they do arise to save your business name. It's good for, say, tomorrow a new social channel appears and in 2 years it's the next big thing. Keeping consistency across your social channels and saving your name as they do arise, or even if you're not using them, it means if you do want to go and use them at another time, you've already got the same, derivative or the same name that represents your firm, so you've got that consistency across social channels. And B, you're not having someone in another area use that name on that social channel, and people, because when you do a Google search, these names do come up and these URLs do come up. People aren't looking at that thinking that that's linked with you. I have seen that occur a few times. I have worked in some businesses where we've had to try and approach people and actually buy, whether it be an Instagram handle or a Twitter handle or a Facebook page URL off someone. It's never fun. They like to hold you at ransom if they think you really, really need it and you've got a bit of money. So it's always a really good tip, even if you don't think you're ever going to use it. Just try and save that there and keep that there for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Hey, I've got a specific LinkedIn question here, which is Stephen was on LinkedIn, but he decided to come off it because. So I'll preface this by saying I would probably recommend everyone who's listening is on LinkedIn if you're not already, and it is the business network. You're dealing with businesses, you probably should be on there. Yeah, I would say you definitely should be on there. But Stephen actually came off because he was getting heaps of requests, but no kind of connection, no conversations, and he found it was taking away his focus, with all these kind of connections, but nothing really material coming of it. So his question really is like, how do you kind of create those discussions with people? How do you kind of on LinkedIn, how do you start? Because I've seen that, I've seen that myself. People want to connect with you, and you connect with them, and there's kind of nothing there. How do you kind of seed those discussions to make it more interactive?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. First of all, you don't have to accept every connection.
Hmm.
I don't. If I don't think it's going to merit or warrant a
Yeah.
connection, I don't. There's some very obvious spam sort of ones out there.
Yeah.
Obviously, an accountant with, and I'm pretty sure I've figured out who Stephen is by this question. If there's an accountant that's quite public facing, is known to being a good accountant, you'll generally find with a little bit of PR or some recognition, everyone wants to become your friend.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it can be a downside, and everyone wants to connect with you. So I think, first of all, streamline those, actually decide who you do and don't want to be connected with. It is your personal network after all. You are in charge of it. The second, in terms of building up connections in that, something that I find really good is if you've got a great blog going on site, or you've got some thoughts about what's happening, publish an article on LinkedIn.
Mm.
So publish an article, put your thoughts together. Maybe it's on, whether Brexit's going to affect small businesses. Maybe it's on the new payroll changes, whatever it is. Maybe it's simply on the euro. It doesn't matter what it is. If you've got something that you have an opinion on, share it. And I quite often say, even if it isn't directly work related, connections and commonalities are formed on, wider things. It doesn't just have to be about accounting. If you have a strong view about how the Euros are being conducted, or you have a strong view about, a community scheme that's going on, someone may not know that about you. They may read that and go, great, I didn't know that Matt was really keen on that. Man, I'd better meet up for Matt for a coffee. He sounds like an accountant that I want to get to know, He's got, the same commonalities and the same morals I do. And take from that, just put aside a time, whether you're doing that weekly, whether you're doing that monthly, have a look at who's engaged with that article and go from those people and reach out and connect to them. So just send them a private message and say, hey, Matt, saw that you liked my article. Thank you. I see that you're a small business and such. If you ever need some help, or if you ever need, if you'd like to meet for a coffee, I'd love to do that. And streamline it that way and make the platform work for you.
So yeah, totally agree. Two things in that. LinkedIn posts are really, really good. We should use them more. Like whenever I've done a LinkedIn post, we get a whole bunch of people looking at it. And often we'll just repost something that we've put on our own blog, and we get a whole load of interest. It's different people who look at those things, and it starts off conversations. So I'd say they're absolutely great. So if people need to take a look at that, you can do a LinkedIn update, which is when you log into LinkedIn, you'll see updates. I think it's on the left, and then do a post is next to it in the middle, and you can put a post. Publish, that's it, yeah, and you can put a picture in. It's actually quite nice. They look quite nice when you do them, so highly recommend those.
I was going to say they have actually really redone that up, so you can actually put an image in. You can put in live links, so if you're wanting to link back to your website, if you're wanting to do a teaser about a blog that's already existing on your website, you can even put in video and images, infographics, anything now, which is great because it used to not be like that. It used to be a bit of an eyesore, but it's it's fantastic what you can do with it now.
It's good, and I'm completely guessing at this, but I have a feeling that those updates, if you bother to put in posts, LinkedIn's algorithms feature those a little bit more. I might not, I might be speaking completely out of it.
It's true. So there's two things there. If you are publishing an article, it does notify your existing network.
Yeah.
So if you sometimes log in under your notifications panel, if you do keep an eye on that, it does say, Matt Wilkinson has published an article on. Next thing with that is that when you do go to publish the article, you can choose up to 3 tags. So you can make that industry specific, so say accounting or accountants, if it's about a particular product, or if it's about, say Xero, or if it's about retail, you can add up to 3 in there. So when for those that follow LinkedIn Pulse, which is where you can get, you can read some nice articles that are split into different industries,
Hmm.
it does actually feature. So say it was under accounting, it'll feature under accounting. So anyone that does a search can actually find that article, even if they're not connected to you.
Hmm.
And the second point on that is where the algorithm comes in, is if people are finding it and reading it, the higher up the search rankings you
Yeah,
come under that particular topic. So it can be a really good source, not only to nurture your existing network, but to find some interest further afar as well.
cool. You've added some science to my completely baseless assumptions, so that's good. Um,
No worries.
the other point I was going to make was that in terms of accepting connections, so Chris mentions that what he doesn't accept anybody he doesn't know, and I used to follow that, but I've actually flipped to I accept. I mean, you get your obvious spam ones, which is like do you want more leads type person, kind of
Yeah.
usually in the Philippines
Hey,
or
I got a
Malaysia.
marriage proposal. That's not bad.
Oh yeah, yeah, I haven't done any of those yet. I'll be connecting with them, but I'm not sure my wife would be too happy. But what I've actually done is if I see that somebody is in a relevant industry, if they're an accountant, if they're in the accounting software industry, I tend to connect with them because I feel like that kind of helps my network, and especially with what you just talked about, Gaucho, with the publishing, I feel like, well, I might not know them, but if they read some of my content and we might connect and then it might develop. Um, what I actually use is in LinkedIn's contact. I can't remember. I think it's called connections. There's like the
Mm,
contact section. You can tag people up in there. So you can tag
mm,
people as accountant. You can tag people as small business. You can tag them as, you know, whatever it is, and then you can filter them down. So that's what I do is I tend to accept more, but then I'll filter that down, and so I can see people who I'm kind of, more connected with, people who I know, and I can filter that quite easily because another advantage of LinkedIn is that it's a really good contact book because, say you're connected with like I don't know, someone at Zero, and then they move jobs. If you didn't know that they'd moved jobs, you've lost their contact potentially because if you just had their email address at Zero, that's gone. Whereas if you've
it's
got their
gone.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
connection, they'll update that and you can get straight through to them. So I think that's a real underrated benefit of LinkedIn particularly, but other social media as well. You're connected in a way that stays permanent.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with that. And, I follow the same principle as you, looking if they're in a relevant industry or a relevant network. Also, if you have a little squiz at their profile, you can see if you've got any connections in common.
Yeah,
It's also a really good way to see if they're of any interest to you.
yeah,
Obviously, I would never say accept any of the marriage proposals or the sales leads or anything like that, unless that's what you're looking for.
yeah.
But there is some good ways that you can just do a couple of checks and see if it's worth it. And at the end of the day, you can always remove someone if you really need to.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Um, got some questions coming in, which I might answer in a minute. I've got a good question from Michael, but I'm just going to hold off for a minute. We covered this a little bit with the Canva question, so maybe we just cover this really briefly. But does visual content work really well?
Absolutely,
Hmm.
definitely. On average, depending what study you see, it equates to about 30% more click-throughs or engagement. So that, you'll see derivatives of that in different studies between anything from 28% right up to kind of 37, 38,
Yeah,
and some of the last ones I've seen. So absolutely, I mean, just think about it in terms of when you see something visually appealing or something's visual alongside text, it relates to more than one sense.
hmm,
And also, some people are visual learners, so they're going to pick up more of the messaging or encapsulate more of what you're trying to get across than what a character limit can provide you with as well.
definitely. Okay. We'll come back to the tools question. So this is a real interesting question from Michael. I know Michael quite well as well, and he says accountants tend to be more introvert than extrovert. He's an accountant. I'm not. I don't know if he can speak, but well, let's say that's true. And being more introverted might be shy of using social media, particularly for their professional practice. Well, I've seen that borne out with some people that don't want to put themselves out there. Um, he's asking like, what advice can you give so accountants can overcome, I guess, shyness to really benefit from social media?
I think one of the key things I've seen with some of the people I've worked with that have been hesitant in terms of shyness or simply not really enjoy talking about themselves is make it part of a weekly routine or a monthly routine and process. So say, for example, you've got a new lead or a new prospect. Make it part of your process before you meet that person or before you call them that you do a quick search on LinkedIn. There are tools if you're using Gmail that actually connect in with your Gmail. So if you do have their email open, it can show you their profile directly within your Gmail that you can click on and have a look at if you need to look at more, or it can give you an overview or a snapshot. So make that part of your process. B, once you do meet with them, maybe send them a LinkedIn message saying, hey, Matt, thank you for the meeting today. It was great to talk to you. Would like to connect with you on here as well. And also any networking events, build that in as part of your networking. Any business cards you get, do a quick search on Twitter and LinkedIn. And then also just think through content that's relevant. Make it more, put the emphasis more on your clients and helping your clients rather than thinking about it as yourself. Think about that content and then just put time aside each week to schedule out things that are of relevance for that week. So whether it's blogs you've got on site, whether it's legislative changes, whether it's something in the community, whether it's industry specific, whether your client's got, a great event coming up, whatever it may be, schedule and put that ahead, because quite often if you just spend a concentrated amount of time, you get through it quickly, you've got your head in it, you're not having to spend, half an hour every day going, oh, I better look for some content to keep it ticking over. You've got it done, and then you just focus on the engagement component of it every day. So if you shift the focus off yourself, first of all, and onto your clients, and two, if you make it part of a process and a routine, once you kind of embed that, like with anything, it becomes natural to you and you build up confidence with it as well. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have a fear of public speaking. Unfortunately, the more you do it and the more you practice, the better you get at it. And it's just exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And I think another thing is that I totally agree with everything you're saying. And the other thing is like, if you go on Twitter, for example, and start putting out content, it's kind of good at first that no one's really listening to you, because you can do that practice in relative quiet. And I think some people worry that, they're going to go on Twitter and like, oh no, everyone in the world could read this. In reality, no one's read it, like hardly anybody. So do your practicing and over a month or two, you'll start getting better at it. And at that point, you'll start building up some followers. So it's sort of like it'll sort itself out kind of thing. You just got to get in there, like you say, get a process and do some doing rather than thinking about it and procrastinating too much. It's just dive in and get started.
And also have a look at other accountants that you know of that and see what they're doing, see what they're doing well. I'm not saying copy them by any means, please don't do that, but just have a look at what types of things are working for them and how they're talking about things, what types of things they're tweeting about or sharing, and have a think how what would work in your terms.
Because, I mean, a lot of it can be quite formulaic in the sense of the interaction bit shouldn't be formulaic at all, right? If you're connecting with somebody, you have a conversation and you're connecting as people. But like if you say, I want to do 5 tweets every week about, things you can do to improve cash flow. Like every small business struggles with cash flow. That's pretty formulaic. Then you go, okay, I'm going to do 5 tweets a week on reacting to things I read in the news. And then I'm going to do a tweet for all our blog posts. Suddenly you've got that process and it is quite formulaic. What you actually come out with out of that will be quite creative, but the process
Exactly.
itself. It doesn't have to be. And I think you're right. If you do it if you're trying to do it ad hoc, that's a massive productivity killer, right? You'd just
Oh
be
God, yeah.
that's a problem with social media. I think that's a pitfall that we didn't talk about, is that I've done it, you'll have done
True.
it, everyone's done it. Is
Very
you
true.
know you're getting messages coming in, and you're dealing with it all too kind of on the hoof. So it's better to plan that stuff and do it in a concentrated kind of session, like you said.
Yeah, and I think as well, just I find when you try and do it ad hoc, you get interrupted, something else becomes more important, you put it off, it becomes too much of a hard task when you feel like you're under pressure to get stuff out at that moment or that day.
Hmm.
Um, and I find as kind of any creative process, if you put some time aside for it and construct whether it's half an hour a week or however much time you do want to spend, you can really get that concentrated effort in, and you can switch on and focus on that one task for that period of time and really get it done well.
Yeah, cool. So kind of sticking on that productivity thing, we don't need to go into this in massive depth, and maybe we can, I mean, just include some links in the follow-up
Yeah,
email. But
absolutely.
you
Links
know,
out.
we can talk about what the specific tools are, but I guess maybe just like an overview of how those things can work in terms of managing social media, and also briefly you talked about when you were earlier in the session we were talking about measuring things like
Mhm.
engagement. I'm quite interested to see how some of these tools might how is that even measured,
So I think there's different buckets of tools there. So first of all, in terms of finding content, there's things like Feedly that you can put together that can bring you curated content. Someone yesterday mentioned Edgar. There's different bits and pieces like that you can use free as well. I always say to people, if you're signing up for newsletters, which I do encourage, if you're setting up Google Alerts, things like that to keep in the know, to
know?
actually create a separate email address for your firm. So whether it be, marketing at, woodfirm.com or whatever derivative, that way you're not being bombarded and you're not being distracted in your inbox as things come through, and you've got all the content in one place to look through.
Mm.
The next would be scheduling, so being able to really prepare and to schedule out tweets or posts in advance. A couple that I always recommend for the size of most accounting firms and also the cost is the first is Buffer.
Hmm.
It's free for a certain number of scheduled updates per week. It's got some simple analytics built into it, so you can see how many people are clicking through, favoriting, whatnot. You can even go as far as scheduling that you want to post between Monday and Friday only, or Tuesday and Sunday, whatever it may be. You can set out how many posts a day and the time frequencies that you'd like them to go out.
Hmm.
And you can actually have a browser extension connected into Chrome. And as you find content, you can just click on it, put it in if you find anything on the fly, or you can just drag and drop into Buffer and it will just, align that next tweet in the next slot that's open. You can, of course, move around the order if you want to in your dashboard, but that's scheduling at its simplest and purest form that you're going to find. Some people say, was it a bit simplistic, is a bit easy, and it's like, well, if that's all you're after, if you're after basic metrics, scheduling things, it's free. You've got, can't do much better than that. You've also got Hootsuite as well, which is quite reasonably priced.
Mm.
It's got a little bit more substantial metrics, and it's also got other integrations. So if you're using something like Zendesk or anything else, it's got a bit more of a integration factor. And the last I recommend, and I personally use myself, simply for the reporting aspect side,
Hmm.
is something called Sprout Social. It is a little bit more expensive. You've got any media you can upload in there. So if you want to look at doing things like GIFs or whatnot,
Mm.
it's great. You can watch brand keywords as well. So if you want to watch, a particular region that you're based in, an industry or whatnot, so you can actually flood through streams there. You can put in feeds of your different lists, and then the reporting aspects are really quite substantial. So you can break down each channel. You can integrate it with Google Analytics. You can get a really nice CSV breakdown if you're wanting to import it into anywhere else of every individual tweet, the time, and the performance of that individual tweet. So if you are a bit of an Excel whiz and want to whip that up into something nice, or if you want to look at commonalities in terms of posting times, you can. So those would be probably the couple of buckets that I would put things into. And then there's things like Canva that help you create great content, or iMovie or whatnot, or a gift maker, anything like that. That if you're wanting to really step up the visual aspects of your content, those are some great tools to have a look at and to think about using as well. Cool. And if you're going for the really easy, basic sort of scheme, you can do a lot of it for free, so you're not looking at a lot of cost and a lot of output. Maybe once you migrate, or you're finding that it doesn't quite meet your needs, is at some point where you may like to look at spending a bit more in terms of cost.
You'll kind of know, won't you, when that happens? I think, you do it and then you go, this isn't working for me, and it's just good to know those tools are out there. So I think they're great. That gives you a really good kind of stepping stones there, between those different tools, and we'll include links to those. So that's cool.
If anyone does have any, I was just going to say, if anyone does have any specific questions about those, or about their using something for their accounting firm, please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to answer them as well. It is a little bit harder over here, not knowing about an individual's accounting firm to align what may be best, but always happy to talk about that further as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So jumping back to a question from Karen, which is a really good one. Now, what's the best way to deal with a negative comment? Do you defend yourself back and forth, or make a polite statement that you'll discuss things privately?
I think there's always two steps that I like to encourage people to follow. So first is always acknowledge it. Yeah. A, because it's a public forum, and B, other people are going to see that negative comment. They are going to see that as well. So you want to look like you are actually, taking in all feedback from people. You are listening. The second would be is always take it offline. You never want to get into a he said, she said scenario online. It doesn't look professional. It doesn't look great. So I'd always think of acknowledging something and doing it quickly as well. Don't let it sit there for days, so that people think that you're not interested or you don't care. Quite often when people complain on social media, they do expect a reply or response or acknowledgement within 24 hours. Quicker, the quicker the better. So even a simple thing to say, hi Matt, really sorry to hear that, or sorry to hear that you feel about this. Would love to discuss it further. Would you like to DM me or private message me your email or your number, and happy to give you a call or happy to flick you an email. That way you're acknowledging it, you're taking it offline, and you can deal with it in the most effective manner. Yeah. I found with accountants, I haven't really seen it happen too often, mainly more small businesses I see. So it's not something that I would over worry about when you're on social media, but it is something to definitely think about and just have a firm-wide approach, especially if you've got more than one person who looks at or manages your social media account, that if ever this does happen, this is what we'll do. Also, just to say, if someone ever uses derogatory language or rude terms, you can actually on Facebook put those terms into your page so that people can't use those terms when they post, so they don't offend anyone else. But I always say still acknowledge it, tell them that they've used language that could offend the rest of your community or followers. Therefore, you will have to delete it, but do acknowledge it so they know. And again, please, private message me or DM me contact details so you can take that offline and sort that.
Yeah, definitely. Like reputation management is a big deal for some industries. I think if you were like an airline, you're going to get people moaning constantly on your social media.
All the time.
But yeah, for most accounting, I've not really seen that stuff happening. My wife works with medical professionals, businesses,
Mm,
and they get it quite a bit, bad reviews and stuff, and it can hurt your Google ranking and stuff like that. And it's a big deal.
mm.
But yeah, I mean, I think follow the follow the instructions you've given, but I don't think it happens too much, which is a good
I
thing.
think in about 7 years I've worked around accountants, I've seen it twice.
Hmm.
So, and that's across a lot of accountants.
Mm.
So it's definitely not something that's common. But I always sort of say to people, obviously, there's extreme situations like airlines where you find some people moan for the sake of it, or they moan to try and get something out of the airline. Quite often, in this case, it's not the sense, and at least they are giving you feedback. You know, you may not agree with it at the end, but at least you are getting feedback on your services or whatever it may be that they are being negative about. And something, you know, it may actually do some good. It may be something that's actually valid and something you guys may need to think about or look at or work into your process.
Yeah, and like often I think you I've had it once where like someone's a little bit crazy, said some crazy stuff on LinkedIn, but the
Yeah,
way he wrote it was so clearly crazy that it didn't really worry me because I think anyone could see that. And so you probably get
exactly.
those type of
Yeah.
people, or people who are very rational about it. Well, they're probably being reasonable and fair, so you probably do need to deal
Mm,
with it. So it probably evens
exactly.
itself
Yeah.
out. But yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's a final question before we can stick around for some other questions from the audience. But so could you think of any interesting people, companies to follow on social media within? Well, it doesn't have to be within accounting and the accounting profession industry. Yeah, just some interesting
I was
feeds.
going to say, how long do you want to be here for?
All right, okay, I'll limit you. I'll limit you to three.
um, I don't know. Like, I'm quite a funny one. I find general people quite interesting, to be
Yeah,
perfectly honest. I mean, I follow industry leaders, so people like Rod Drury, I find him quite funny. His tweets are quite good.
yeah.
I like Richard Branson. I find some of his stuff quite good. But then the Dalai Lama actually has a really, really cool Twitter account, so I like stuff like that. I
Yeah,
love,
right.
yeah, being a bit of a foodie, I love any chefs accounts. So in Newcastle here, I'm a bit of a fangirl of a couple of the chefs at restaurants and
That's
stuff.
cool.
So, I mean, I think it depends on your interest and depends what you like. But there's so many good accounts out there, and I often say don't overlook the small guy. I mean, there are
Mm,
the Richard Bransons around and whatnot that obviously do have prolific advice, but I've found we've got where I work up here, there's a couple of great people in the shared working space I'm in that have
mm,
really good accounts. They put out really, really good content, and I actually find I'm more engaged with them
yeah.
because I relate to them more. I'm on more of the same level, and I can understand the content that they're putting out
Mhm.
because it's often pains or annoyances or problems in whether it be social media or business or life that I can relate to.
Mhm.
So I often say, you know, never overlook the small person with that because you'll often find you'll have a bit more in common.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm debating whether to tell you my Dalai Lama and food joke. I don't know whether to do it.
Maybe not.
Um, so, listen, has anybody got any more questions? We're going to hang around for a couple more minutes. Please fire them in. I appreciate there's been some really good questions come in, and so just fire those in. Before we go, I just wanted to mention that we've got you can win a free website and coaching. So we're giving away a website and 1 year of hosting from BizInc. Just visit bizinconline.com and you can book a demo. Um, also a free year of coaching from Pricing Power. So Steve Major give you some awesome coaching, go to transformationaladvisor.com/apply. I'm sick of saying that URL; it's way too long. We'll send it out in the email afterwards as well. Final thing is that our final month of marketing event. We've been doing these events right through June. The forgotten P of marketing. So that P is about pricing. It's all about pricing. So that's with Steve Major. Going to be a really interesting webinar next week. You can see the times up on screen. We've got Stephen's asked me to tell the joke about the Dalai Lama. So the Dalai Lama walks into a pizza shop, and he asks for one with everything.
Oh, I quite like that actually.
Yeah. Anyway, I definitely shouldn't be a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, stick to your day job.
Stick to my day job. Well, listen, that leaves me just to thank you for a great presentation, Gayatri. Really been great. And also to everyone for coming along. Hope you can make it to that final event. And as you're registered for Month of Marketing, we'll be sending out a whole bunch of what we're calling expert insights videos, and they'll be coming out next week. Just got one more question, which is Michael's wanting to get in touch with you, Gayatri, to I think probably find out a bit more about social media. So
Absolutely.
we'll do that after the webinar.
Yeah, no problem at all, Michael.
Cool.
And
okay.
Just thank you very much from me as well. Good morning to those of you who are in my part of the world, and good evening to those of you who've joined us from New Zealand and Australia. And thanks for having me, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I think we've got people from all over the place. I think we've got some people from the US as well, so that's cool. So we're all kinds of different.
Very late there.
I know, it's very late. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, thanks again, and thanks everyone for coming. We'll wrap it up there. Send out the recording tomorrow, and we'll send out some of those links as well.